Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Download, where we give you the discussions and analysis from a Catholic perspective. Today is Thursday, April 13, 2023, during the octave of Easter. I'm Michael Voris, and here with my two co-hosts, Simon Rafe and Christine Niles. And joining us today as our guest host is David Gordon. Hey, David, how are you?
Good, Michael. Thank you.
Excellent. Okay, today we're going to be talking about wayward priests. Many prominent priests are off their rockers theologically, even supporting the homosexual agenda. We're going to be diving deeper into the background of these issues a little bit later in the show. However, right now, to start things off, we're joined by one of our producers, Joe Enders, to talk about Father James Martin, talking about off his rocker, being up to his usual tricks, and we know what category that is. Hey, Joe, what's this most recent thing now from Father James Martin?
Yeah, Mike. Father Martin announced on Twitter on Monday the launch of a new feature on the pro-gay website, Outreach. Martin is the editor of Outreach, and here was his announcement. A little weird.
First of all, happy Easter. And today we have something really exciting to announce, the launch of a new feature called the Outreach Guide to the Bible and Homosexuality. For billions of believers, the Bible is a treasured resource, the living Word of God. But for some LGBTQ people, the Bible can feel like an enemy, especially when people use Bible verses to condemn LGBTQ people. So we have assembled some of the world's top biblical scholars to help you understand those passages and see them in their context. We have internationally recognized experts like Walter Brueggemann, Amy Jo Levine, John R. Donahue, Harold Attridge, and the late Tom Stegman, as well as other LGBTQ Christians. They will help you understand the passages that relate to homosexuality and see the Bible, we hope, in a new light.
All right, so obviously on face value, it's like, okay, we're unveiling this new product. We're going to be talking about this whole thing. But then he goes through these internationally acclaimed scholars. You know, this is exactly what you hear him talking about. I just want to kind of go through like a few of these scholars just to kind of give everybody a better idea on who he considers, real good authorities to talk about the issue of homosexuality and how it's approached by the Catholic Church. We have Walter Brueggemann, which was the main one that he brought up. We got him right here. And this guy, Protestant, not even a Catholic. They claim he is one of the world's most influential Old Testament scholars. Okay, and now we'll get into some of this. I call these ones vegan butchers in a way. We have Amy Jo Levine, a Jewish New Testament scholar. Not really sure what that even means, but this is her. She's right here. And she wrote the landmark book, The Misunderstood Jew, which looks at Jesus' Jewish background. Not sure what that has to do with homosexuality or why she's somehow an authority to talk about it, but hey, according to Father James Martin, she's A-okay. Next, we have Grant Hartley. And before I go into what he is, I think that says it all. He's a theology student and the co-host of the Life on Side B podcast, which discusses the intersections between faith, sexuality, and gender.
Hey, Joe, I got to interrupt you for a second.
Yeah,
every time in the liberal, crazy, modernist, all that world, whenever you encounter the word intersection. That's everything after it is propaganda.
Well, it's actually a dog whistle.
Yeah.
It's talking about intersectionality, the idea that everybody needs to work together against big, mean Western Christian white man. And that's like their big, obviously claim to fame and stuff. So we also have Brandon Robertson. He calls himself an openly gay Christian scholar. Once again, another vegan butcher. Where are these people coming from? And these are the people. Once again, Father James Martin, that's their go-tos. And then the last one we have is Yunyan Trujillo. And that is she's an immigration lawyer. Obviously, that means she has the utmost respect for Catholic teaching and the teachings of the Church on homosexuality, as all immigration.
Homosexual illegal immigrants.
Yes,
perfect.
We got to watch out for the homosexual illegal immigrants. Now, basically, the thrust of this entire thing is to go back to that God. This has been Father James Martin's point, basically from the beginning, is that homosexuality is a way that you are born, and God made you the way that you were born, and therefore it is good. We obviously know that that's not true. If somebody is born with same-sex attraction for, whatever reason, I personally don't even know if that's possible. It might be. I'm not a scientist. I can't say I know. But if it is, fine. That would be a consequence of living in a sinful and fallen world. So, I mean, and they've been thrusting this the whole time.
Yeah, Joe, one of these things that I think will help viewers understand this is that there has been this environment of scholarship in this regard. There was a book written probably in the 1980s or so. The author has since died, God rest his soul, but he was an openly gay priest. I know that's shocking. And the thrust of his book was that there were all sorts of various gay couples, sometimes lesbians, sometimes males, throughout all of church history. And sometime around the year 500 up till about the Protestant Revolt, there were actually same-sex, or I guess we would kind of call them civil union ceremonies that were performed by a bishop and who would unite these two people. And he never got into whether they were actually doing sexual acts or not, but kind of the implication was there. So what Father Martin is kind of resurfacing here with just a whole field of these guys is that same thing. The Bible's wrong. It's misunderstood by a bunch of, puritanical, crazy Catholics who, hate gays and la. And here's the real truth. And this has been going on now for about 30-ish years, directly saying that, yep, this is all perfectly fine. The Bible actually blesses all of this. You don't understand the Bible. Yeah, and I think, Dave, you can probably attest to this as well. Is that it's almost a form of Gnosticism, where the Bible actually doesn't really mean those very clear things that it's saying in so many places. There's actually this hidden truth that you can find if you really dive in and read it this way.
Sure. I mean, basically, as with all things Protestant, this is outsourcing magisterial role, not to the magisterium itself, but to scholars. And they have this Gnostic, secret, hidden knowledge that they're supposedly giving and unpacking and imparting to people. And then people who have no credentials to really criticize or critique whether it's sound scholarship, which of course it's running afoul of church teaching, so it's not. But then people are content to march along blindly and defer to the wisdom, the so-called wisdom of the experts. So you do have a Protestantized Gnosticism, and that's what everything devolves into once you get rid of the legitimate magisterium.
And as I was showing you guys earlier, a lot of the people that are coming out with these studies that are saying that we need to reimagine this question have a personal stake in it. They are homosexuals themselves. It's very interesting to me that when somebody has something so personal and meaningful and internal to them, that they're putting that thing, which is homosexuality in this instance, before God and making an idol of it. And that's why they obsess over the issue. That's why the issue it has to be reimagined. It has to be changed to conform to their desires, as opposed to them conforming themselves to Christ.
Yeah, Joe, it sounds a lot like this outreach thing is similar to something that I saw a few years ago now. It was the Queen James Bible. There was actually a group of scholars, again, we're using that word, a group of scholars who'd gone around and they'd taken the language of the King James Bible and deliberately changed it up so that there was no way that it could be used, in their words, for anti-LGBT LGBTQI, MOUSC, whatever they were doing at the time. But it couldn't be used for anti-gay stuff. You couldn't find anything in there. And of course, it sounds awfully like the same thing is happening here, that what they're doing is they're saying we're starting with a conclusion, that it's okay to be gay, it's perfectly fine, it's perfectly natural, it's perfectly normal, and then they're looking for a mechanism to justify it.
And that's exactly what they're doing. Look, at the end of the day, this is very simple. At the end of the day, the church is very clear: homosexual acts are intrinsically disordered. You are not. This is the teaching of the church. Marriage is between one man and one woman. And the purpose of sex is both procreative and unitive. These are all the teachings of the church. You cannot believe just one of those things. You have to believe all three in unison at all times. And what these people are intending to do is try to change how we understand that. And they're doing it because they have a personal stake in it.
Yeah.
Well, look, we're told that outreach is this Catholic thing, right? This is the statement, the kind of self-identification statement from Outreach. And it says, Outreach is an LGBTQ Catholic resource that offers news, essays, resources, and community for LGBTQ Catholics. But what they're doing is essentially doing a workaround so they don't have to defer to the magisterium, and they're deferring to Protestant and Jewish quote-unquote experts to get around the authoritative teaching of the church. There's nothing Catholic about it. What they're doing is they're masquerading something as something that it's not. This is Protestant, it's not Catholic, and it's false.
I'll jump in here also, Joe, for a second. There is Father Martin, I guess it was probably about a year or so ago now, tweeted out that we did a Vortex on this topic, that all of these scholarly views that he's promoting right now. This is why I'm bringing this up, because he's contradicting himself on something he's actually tweeted out about a year ago. He said that, yes, there's all of these groups saying that the Bible doesn't really condemn homosexuality and all of those things, and I'm saying, no, that's wrong. The Bible does actually condemn homosexuality, but the Bible is wrong. That's what he tweeted out. Did a Vortex on that.
I remember that.
And we went after that specifically because that was something of a sea change in this whole discussion about what does the Bible say about this. For decades, the line was what he's promoting now, that, well, the Bible just says these things, but it doesn't really mean it, and you haven't brought the right scholarship to bear on it, you're not looking at it through the right lens, it doesn't really condemn any of this stuff. And for him to now sort of go back onto that bandwagon when he tweeted out, nope, the Bible does say all that stuff, it's just the Bible's wrong. I'm going to suspect he took a lot of heat for saying the Bible's wrong, and now he's trying to sort of square this circle and say, oh, look at all this wonderful scholarship we have, and priests speak with forked tongue.
The truth comes out with this sort of thing. That's what it is. And Father Martin, that's the truth. That's what he really believes, that the Bible is wrong.
Yeah.
Well, this is common among the left. They just try the scattergun approach, and you see it with atheists too. They'll say Jesus swooned or the disciples stole the body and to explain away the resurrection. And of course, these things are all contradictory. But all they care about is arriving at a preordained end. They don't really care about truth. They want to arrive at their conclusion, and that's what Martin's doing here. The conclusion is that somehow homosexuality is okay within Catholicism, within the Christian framework. Of course, it's not. But he'll bend facts. He'll use duplicitous method to arrive at that preordained conclusion.
I'd be duplicitous if I did not say about the little encounter I had, and Christine knows it because she was there, sending a little video of it on her cell phone when we were in Rome just a day or so before the Pachamama Synod began in 2019. So 2019, yeah, 2019. And I ran into Father Martin out on the street right outside the Vatican and started asking him, saying, how come you don't tell people when you're talking to all these audiences all over the place, why aren't you telling people, you have to live by the church's teaching, we don't hate gays, blah, 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 but however, you can't be doing this sort of thing. He's, oh, well, I do that. I said, no, you don't, Father. You have never come out in front of your audiences and said, oh, it's fine to be gay, you just can't practice it. Don't have sex, no sexual acts. You've never said that, Father. And if you did, you'd have lost everybody who follows you, because those are the people who follow you. Right. And we went just a little back and forth, and he finally looked at his watch, said he had to go do some interview with Associated Press. Of course he had to go do an interview with Associated Press. Joe, thanks very much for joining us with all of this today. Good reports. Thank you. All right, now the main topic of the episode, talking about oddball priests with regard to this, the whole Father Martin issue. We're going to expand it here. And this problem of priests who simply, they don't know the faith. If they do know the faith, they disregard the faith. They don't believe the faith. We have told the story. I have to be, again, circumspect in how I say it because I don't want to get anybody in trouble. But we are aware of an archbishop here in the United States who... I won't say how we know it for a fact, out of his mouth, in the presence of other bishops, said there's no such thing as the deposit of faith. So That creates, and it's a very influential archbishop. And no, it's not Cardinal Cupich. Although he might
probably agrees that there
might
is
be
no
in that
deposit of
category. This is a huge problem when your clergy are this bad. And we talked about this, we sort of got our street creds on this topic. But you're beginning to see the really horrible fruits of this now. There's almost no young people. Yeah, there's almost no young people left in the church.
Yeah,
virtually
Very quickly,
gone.
I just want to go back just the whole topic of Father Martin. We actually have an FAQ page on our website, and I encourage people to go read it because I don't throw around the word heretic easily. But he would absolutely qualify as being a heretic because that involves obstinate denial of a doctrine of the faith. So I'm just going to roll off a few quick things here that he himself has said. We've got the links to it. He won't come out and say, tweet about it, but he has said these in talks. For instance, he has said that homosexuals are not bound by chastity because teachings of the church must be received, and the LGBT community has not received this, therefore it's not binding on them. He has said that the church must, quote, reverence so-called same-sex marriage, his words, because it's holy and sacred love. He has said that the catechism needs to be changed, that it's hurtful to call same-sex attractions disordered. It's just differently ordered. He has promoted transgender children. He's all into transgender children, and he supported multiple dissident clergy and religious, including Sister Janine Gramick, who was censured multiple times by the Vatican for founding New Ways Ministry, which is a dissident pro-gay organization of which he has accepted awards. And he claims that former homosexuals do not lead a fully integrated life. So there's just a handful of things. The man is indeed a heretic, and he's a Protestant. He's not a Catholic, he's a Protestant.
I'm not sure he's a Protestant. That would lead you to believe he thinks Jesus is God. I'm not sure that's the case.
It's interesting. I think one of the most interesting things that we have with this whole notion of bad priests, malformed priests, priests who are they don't know the faith. And we talk about this a lot. I wonder, has this problem of priests not knowing the faith, is this maybe not a new problem? Let's go all the way back. In the Middle Ages, did priests, quote unquote, know the faith, or were they able to go to the community of people and help them with the problems that they were facing? Because the problems they were facing were ones that could be handled by somebody who didn't have some great in-depth theological knowledge, didn't need to be talking about this. Nobody back in the 1500s was sitting there going, oh yeah, it's okay to be gay. What do I do? My cousin is shacked up. He's trans now. It was a wholly different thing. So what we've got is this shift, this change. Do you want to say it started in the Enlightenment? Do you want to say it started in the 20th century, in the post-war period? Whatever. We've got all of these new things, and suddenly it's this question of, are these priests? Were they never equipped to deal with this? But just the church was like, well, don't be ridiculous. We don't just men are not going to be
gay marriage.
Yeah, men are not going to be cutting off important parts of themselves, putting on a dress and speaking like this and pretending to be a girl. That's not going to happen. I do not need to train the priest to deal with it, but apparently you do.
Well, it's also important to remember that really prior to the Council of Trent, the idea of a seminary, as we understand it, where you go through these formal training, it's like college and post-college, whatever, and you're taking this class and this and systematic theology and dogmatic theology and all these different things, that didn't exist in the church. And an enormous number of priests were priests with religious orders. The idea of here's a parish and there's 25 priests in it, the Irish model imported over, from Ireland to the United States, and all the immigrants are there, and what we sort of think of as church life, that was not church life then. They were all built around, the communities formed around the monasteries, around the castles and the feudal houses of the king or the feudal lord or whatever, and that was it. This idea of really, that you would never have had these kinds of questions come up. You could barely sustain your life.
But you will notice that they built the seminary model post-Trent. Trent is a reaction to what? Trent is a reaction to the Protestant revolt.
Right.
So so the first of these assaults comes on the faith, and it's how do we deal with this? We need to deal with this with some kind of intellectual rigor into actual life. I think we kind of need a Trent 2.0 to come back and say, how do we deal with all of this, sexual garbage?
Not right now.
No.
That would not be good
Okay,
right now.
right.
Vatican III. Could you imagine Vatican III in the early 21st century?
Something else that's completely changed now too is the internet. I mean, social media, which is a double-edged sword. So on the one hand, you can reach now millions of people with authentic church teaching, and then on the other hand, you know, you can use
You could reach millions of
for the
people.
opposite, like what Father Martin is doing. So.
And now it seems like every freak and fetishist and pervert is part of a quote-unquote community. It used to be, before the internet and before social media, that if you were the village pervert, you were kind of just isolated and ostracized.
Killed.
But now you can get on Reddit and there will be some thread you can follow that it's
It'll
like,
support you and-
people who are attracted to beagles and German shepherds, and it's like, well, you know what, this becomes my identity. I'm now like a beaglist or whatever.
Yeah.
And these people are finding courage, you know, false courage, of course, evil, disordered courage, but they're finding it in numbers as opposed to, and this is why there's these campaigns against bullying today. This is why this is so big. It's because there used to be a salutary social pressure to not be a freak, to not be an outright sinner, to not be a notorious fetishist. And that's gone away. We've become desensitized. The internet's allowed these people to come together, to find each other, and then to pretend that like dyeing your hair blue and mutilating your genitals is somehow normal and a good thing.
As a large part of this problem, as we've detailed quite a bit, certainly weren't the first, but I think we took the bullhorn and we became the loudest. Was just the total capitulation within the church, within the clerical state of the church, complete capitulation to homosexuality. And you know, as you look at sort of what happened, have there always been homosexuals in the clergy? Yes. I mean, St. Peter Damian in Rome, you know, 1,000 years ago. So you just can't have, you know, 2,000 years of history and all of a sudden it's only the last, you know, couple, 3 decades or whatever. So when you're looking at this, you had this huge number of priests. 100,000 priests left the priesthood between 1965 and 1975. 100,000 priests around the world left the priesthood in those 10 years. Most of them, I think, went off to go get married because it was like, oh yeah, hey, things are cool, and nuns are getting out of their habits and, you know, putting on whatever their, you know, pantsuits, and off they went. What that did was not only lower the number of priests worldwide, it increased the percentage of homosexual men who stayed in the priesthood. And they're the ones who started getting offices and all of that. So I think you've always sort of had this thread, but just that whole confluence of those different historical events and the sexual revolution and all of it, all of a sudden, what do you have? Well, now you have a dominant, you know, this is the New York Times has said this. I've never heard anybody disagree with it because I think it's true. When Maureen O'Dowd said the Catholic priesthood has become a gay profession. Absolutely. You know, nobody with a right mind maintains that the percentage, and I don't mean if they're practicing or they have other priest boyfriends or whatever, but who are homosexual men in the Catholic priesthood is over 50%, and it's probably much more than that.
Yeah.
I think, you know, what we're seeing with Outreach and Father James Martin and the really heightened scrutiny that this issue is receiving, because if you look at LGBT people, you know, they're a very small fraction of the nation of Western society, you know, 3 to 5% ish. But we have all this attention on
Unless you're in
these
Gen
things.
Z, now it's 20%.
No, that's LGBTQIA. That's including allies, which is like practically everyone who doesn't have a strong will. See, this is how they gin the numbers up. Or the other one, I mean, this is kind of a tangential, like, you know, throwaway comment, but it's like, just because you can't get a date with a girl doesn't mean, dude, that you're bi. I mean, there you go.
A lot of these
that's
kids
very
are
Joe Enders.
They're just going through phases. A lot of them are just going through phases, or think it's popular, or they think now it's like the new punk rock thing. Like that's the way you go against the grain. Is I'm going to be gay because that's how, you know.
That's how it is.
I mean, when it was me, it was like, yeah, I'm going to be punk rock. You know, that's how. Now it's I'm going to be gay.
We've
or now
discussed
it's actually
how you
I'm going to be trans.
I want pictures. It's great. Sorry, Dave, you were saying.
Well, sure. So we're seeing a really disproportionate amount of emphasis placed on this issue, and it's partly, and by the way, to the chagrin of like like really legitimately married heterosexual couples, because the church doesn't even talk about marital heterosexual relations this much. We have all this emphasis on gay sex. The church has never even formally defined a lot of conjugal love issues, and it's left up to theologians to debate. But leaving that aside, it's because there's this gay priesthood cabal where you have this disproportionate amount of focus on this thing, because guess what? A lot of our theologians are gay, and it's their little pet issue.
When we were at the extraordinary Synod on the Family in 2014, a friend of ours that people may remember his name, Father Thomas Rosica, was the, he's a wonderful plagiarizer, he's one of the best. He was the English-speaking liaison for the Synod and the press. For one of the very first times, they didn't actually allow any press inside the Synod hall. None. They used to have one or two sort of just, representative token reporters there. Nobody was allowed in, and Father Martin is the Father Rosica is the one who was the relayer of information from the hall to the international media. And he sat there every day with his little sheet going, okay, today they talked about gay bestiality, gay, and people got to love each other. And that was it. And when that midterm relatio came out on the feast of Our Lady of Fatima on October 13th, 2014, that headline exploded across the world that, Vatican says gay is okay. Because it had that little thing in there, the church, has to admit that homosexuals have certain gifts and qualities. He was single-handedly the man who emblazoned that across all of the international media. And later on, and we're sitting there going, well, this can't possibly be true. Yeah. This isn't a Vatican document. Granted, it's not an official document, but it's about as official as you can get without being official. And we ran into a bishop, an African bishop, and I was interviewing him after that came out, and I said, what's all this gay stuff? And he looked at me like I had 6 heads. And I was like, what are you talking about? Said, well, there's gay this and Vatican, gifts and qualities and blah, blah, blah. And he's like, well, we're not talking about that in there. I'm like, what?
He was a liar. So, and we know he's living in ignominy now ever since it was proven that he's a serial plagiarist. So, he got his just desserts.
And on the point of who does what, and your point, David, of they're kind of ginning all this stuff up because that's their flavor. He absolutely adored Gregory Baum.
Yep.
Had him on his show when he used to run Salt and Light. And this is the thing, they get these guys in these key positions. Gregory Baum, for the audience who may not know that, was a theologian, priest. Turns out he was leading this secret gay life. He left the priesthood, got married to a woman, and kept living his secret gay life for 30 years.
But he's the one who spearheaded the opposition in Canada against Humani Vitae.
Yep. You've got the guys in the very right positions, and the question of sort of the malformation of the men who are ordained and are not of this persuasion. Why aren't they saying something?
Well, okay, so I think there is a thing here, and it's actually something that people watching can kind of do to help. It's not a quick fix, but I think it is a good one. So this just kind of gets into a whole bunch of stuff. But kind of prior to World War II, about that period, it was possible for 2 guys to be friends. And 2 guys could be friends, and they could be like really, really close friends. And you see that in the letters and the literature of the time, when 2 guys can be incredibly close, and they can be closer than brothers, and this whole thing. And it was this great friendship. You see it in literature. So you see Sam and Frodo in Lord of the Rings. You see Holmes and Watson in the Sherlock Holmes stories. You see all of these characters. Once the sexual revolution kind of hits, it starts being interpreted. All of these things are interpreted in a gay way. Now, obviously, some of that, I will admit, some of that is this massive push as an agenda. We want Holmes and Watson to be gay because we need more gay characters. Fine. That's you gay people, you're pushing that there. But a lot of it is people, guys, who, for whatever reason, probably, it's kind of one of your favorite topics to discuss, the failure of the family, as you say, Christine, the failure of fatherhood and stuff. They don't have a model for authentic masculine friendship. They don't have a model for authentic masculine friendship that isn't sexual. So you've probably got these priests who have been starved of any sense of masculine affection. Maybe their fathers were absent. Their fathers weren't, dealing with it in an appropriate way. They feel, I've got no option but to be gay. How do I have masculine love without gay sexual behavior? And they have no concept to do it. The way I think that people can do and help out there is, mums, don't let your sons grow up to be emotionless, distant people. Allow them to have these male friendships. Encourage this. Fathers, engage with your sons. Get them to have these close friendships and not go, oh, it's kind of gay, son,
And also, we can't forget that a large number of them were also sexually abused.
Yes.
Many gay men admit that they kind of became gay because they were sexually molested by another male, whether it's a neighbor or a grandparent, whoever. I did a special report on Father Gregory Lockney, who was arrested for soliciting 2 underage males. And this vigilante comes out and he's got him on camera, and then Lockney admits, yeah, I was abused when I was 15, the same age of the kids that he was trying. So it's this vicious cycle.
Vicious cycle.
Well, and this also relates back to the family and the breakdown of the family, precisely because as the sexual revolution took off, and you have a lot of kids growing up in single mother households, and they're inviting in new boyfriends. Most molestations, the safest place a kid can be is in the home with the biological father. Most molestations are from somebody they know, and a lot of times it's the boyfriend that's being invited into the household, and this is it all comes together, and there's a confluence. It's a confluence of events stemming from the sexual revolution and the breakdown of the family.
Yeah.
Do you think there's a solution within the priesthood as things are within the clerical stage, that would include bishops, obviously, with the current crop of people? They never talk about this. And let's just give like the easy example. 2018, all the McCarrick stuff happened. All of that comes out. It's all there. It's all very clear what's going on. They lied at the Dallas Charter in 2004 after the 2002 Boston Globe stuff. The whole thing. There was no appetite whatsoever to address this homosexual issue in the clerical ranks. Then after that, in 2018, remember, they had the bishops' conference. They were going to get up and start reading, homosexual, blah, 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 and all of a sudden the Pope shut it down. Christophe Pierre, the nuncio, read the letter and said, you're not to talk about any of this. We'll handle all of this in Rome. 2 months later, 3 months later, in February, we were there for that. The sex summit was 3 days. And one of those days started at noon, and the third day ended at noon. So there was like one full day. Supich was in charge of it, and when I was watching the feed of it from the Vatican Hall, the Paul VI auditorium where they were holding it, the Ann Thompson from NBC, I went to Notre Dame with her, asked the question, how are we supposed to believe anything that you're saying right now? Because many of us were sitting here right then after the whole 2002 thing, and we said it was told it was going to be handled and all of this and everything, and she asked Supich a question about homosexuality, and he said, we're not talking about that. So how do you get at this when the only people who can change it are all baked into the problem?
You can't. I don't see you can. And I think that even if there was a will to do it, let's say that there were some people who had the will to do it, I think that they don't have the power, that the power is controlled by people like Supich. And I don't know if Supich is gay or not, but clearly he's gay friendly.
Sure.
And I think that all of these guys...
At that point, it doesn't matter.
Well, no, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
But, all of these guys there, a lot of them are actively gay, at which point everyone else has got the goods on them.
Yeah.
Everyone else has got the goods on them, and everyone's got the goods on each other, and it's back and forth. And it's like, this is a mutually assured destruction moment. Nobody wants to give up the comfortable mansion downtown. Nobody wants to give up the pleasure of hanging around at cocktail parties and wearing, silk robes and all this sort of stuff. Nobody wants to give that up. I don't see a way to deal with the current crop. It has to start with the laity. It has to start with the family, so that the soil out of which they are taking these, so we can start plucking flowers and not weeds.
And I think in this case, the biological solution, you just kind of have to wait for these bad guys to die out and hope and pray that the new crop will be better. I do know, in a little bit of good news, that I am contacted, by seminarians and by priests who watch Church Militant, and they are very strong on these issues. Now, they may or may not be supported by their bishops, but, they're rising in the ranks, are getting older, and who knows, maybe one day they will be able to take over. So Yeah, we have to hope and pray.
I have a bit of a different take. As to Michael's question, I do think it's possible. You would, just like American presidents get one issue really to spend political capital on per term, we would need a pope who comes in, and this is the mandate of his pontificate, is to root out the homosexual mafia within the church and to really purify seminaries. Now, that said, obviously, this is ultimately going to go back to the family for the silver bullet. You know, the family is the first school. It's the privileged place of evangelization of children. Parents are the formators and educators of their kids. They're the primary educators. So everything is going to go back to them. If broken people are being produced by the family, then you're going to get broken people going into seminary. So, I mean, there is this intellectual, really logical solution. You got to trace things back and say, what is the true provenance of the problem, and it's broken families. So therefore, we've got to attack at the family. We have to restore the family, however that's done. But if a pope wanted to, let's get a micromanaging pope that's going to get in there and not just be like, I'm going to dispatch like JP2 did, you know, some priests and bishops to investigate American seminaries. Let's get a pope that's involved in the day-to-day cleanup and have you know, like an oath of fidelity to the magisterium. How about an oath against homosexualism that each rector of a seminary has to take? We need a micromanaging pope.
That's all very nice, but to me it seems like it would take a miracle to get a pope like that, because right now Pope Francis has stacked the deck in the College of Cardinals so that the next pope, if we just follow the logic and what we have, it's going to be Francis 2.0, maybe worse. So, I mean, it really would take a miracle of the Holy Spirit, which we can certainly pray for. We should pray for that, but it's not something that is likely going to happen.
As I say, hope is not a strategy.
Hope is not a strategy. But equally, I think...
It is a supernatural virtue, not a strategy.
I think a thing that we, as laity, need to be doing, this is kind of, it's interesting, I've been listening, you know, to the language that we have used, both in here and also in the wider amount of our journalism and our reports and stuff. We need to stop talking about homosexual sex. There is no such thing as homosexual sex. When homosexuals get together and do what they do, they are taking every single possible step, every single measure they can to make sure that what they are doing is not sex. Contracepted sex isn't sex. Sex outside of marriage isn't sex. It's fornication. Between two men and two women doing this, it's not sex. We need to stop talking about it in that sense. It is a disordered misuse of the sexual function. This isn't my thing. This was Dr. Alan Keyes who said this, and I heard it. I was like, that is brilliant. The other thing that we need to be doing as laity and as family is we need to be having more sex. We need to be having more sex, and as the phrase that I used in a conference that I did with Dr. Keyes was, we need to be making love. Not just as a euphemism for sexual activity, but we need to be making love, as in constructing love within the universe. To your point, Dave, we need to be, parents need to be having children. They need to be not engaging in contraception. They need to not be saying, oh, well, we're going to use NFP until we've finished this and until I've got the house paid off and whatever. They need to be having children, so there are sufficient children to go into the priesthood. They need to be raising them properly and doing all this stuff.
Well, that's
Simon
the problem.
Ray, sorry.
Go ahead.
Have more sex. That's a point we can all get behind.
Well, not all of us.
Not all of us. No, obviously. Well, no. Have more sex, because only married couples, legitimately married, you know, opposite sex, you know, a man and a woman, open to the transmission of your life, only they can have sex. Everyone else is just fornicating about.
Yeah, but on this topic, if you just want to trace things back to their roots, you know, not to get too far afield here, but contraception is what led to the sexual revolution. It completely changed the idea of sex. So now it no longer means, oh, I'm going to have a baby, and it's within the context of a loving marriage. It's I can have an orgasm in any way that I wish. It doesn't even have to be same sex. It could be anything. It could be a machine. It doesn't matter. It's just my self-pleasure, because I can do that now after this contraceptive mentality of divorcing procreation from the purpose of sex, and that's ingrained, it's saturated in this country now. And contraception has also led to homosexuality for the same reasons.
Sure, yeah, it's all pieces of a part. When I was on retreat at sea, we did some questions and answers from the retreatants, and one of them said, a lady said, she was standing there with her husband, and she said, you know, our child is going to be going to, our boy is going to be going to seminary. We think, seems to want to be a priest, not quite sure yet. What should we do? And I said, you need to go with him. You parents need to go with him, and you need to say to the rector, Are you gay? Are there people on this staff who are friendly towards homosexuality? Let me see the books that you're going to be using in the classrooms. Who are the professors that are teaching this? You need to do a screening thing. And when I said ask the rector if he's gay, of course we get a nice chuckle and uproar from the 350 retreatants. But I mean, this is very much true. You're going to a parish. You need to investigate all of this. I mean, this is all fine having you have as many kids as you can, but they're going to move out into the world. Are they aware of what the situation is? Are you sitting down having not just, here's how you say your rosary? I'm not saying, of course you have to do all that. You can't do just that. You have to explain all of this. That's why we do this here. That's why we're having this discussion. People have to have their eyes open and go, oh, why ultimately? Because all of this leads to hell. That's why. I mean,
Exactly.
let's go big picture here. You got on this one narrow little road and happily find that gate, or you go to hell. That's it.
Yeah, and I'm a parent of 4 children. I agree completely. I mean, when I go home, I have to explain these things to my children. There is no parent out there, and it's dereliction of duty for parents out there, especially Catholic parents, to simply just send their children off to Catholic school and just expect them to learn everything they need to learn at Catholic school. I sent them for a while to probably one of the best Catholic schools here that was run by Dominican nuns, but there were still problems there. There were still times I was hearing stuff that the teachers were saying that I was like, what? I'd have to go and call up the principal, who was the sister, and say, do you know that this is being taught? Did you know that this is being done? You have to be proactive with your children. Like I said, I mean, look, parents, you're going to have to stand before God one day, and you will have to give an account for your children's souls. You will have to give an account for your children's souls. And if they're not saved, you will be punished for that. You will. Just like a husband will be punished if his wife is not saved, and all of these things. And it's serious. You have to take it deadly seriously because your soul depends on it.
That none of those, to quote Christ, that you have given me will be lost. And here's the other thing. You have to love your children. A lot of parents, they're content like, oh yes, I'm going to procreate as many children as possible. But then they're not involved, and the father might not be involved. And there's not outward affection. There's not affective love being given in the household. And if that's the way you're running your household, you're breeding an army for the enemy. The enemy can't procreate. Homosexuals can't procreate, but they can co-opt our children, our unloved children. So it's not enough to even have a lot of children and just teach them the faith, although you should do those things. You also have to love your children. Yeah. Otherwise, you're going to get this adolescent rebellion. Kids aren't leaving the Catholic Church. You get 17-year-olds who hate the Catholic Church. It's because they hate their upbringing.
They're leaving their parents.
Exactly.
Yes. Yeah,
and that's not natural.
And I actually know of traditional Catholic families, not all of them, obviously there's some wonderful ones, but I do know of some that have like 14, 15 children, and almost all of them grow up leaving the faith. Yeah. Why? Because the parents were either way too strict, or radical, or didn't show the love they needed to show, or that sort of thing.
Well, I think as well, look, we're looking at a lot of, parents now who've got children when they reach the age, the age of majority, they're going out. Those parents are about my age, they're mid-40s, okay? So those parents are like Gen X, okay? Well, those parents, those Gen X parents, when they were Gen X children, they were messed up by their parents, by the boomers who were doing this. And I think there's this long chain of failed parenting. There's this big thing out there, this big discussion of like, I'm going to break the chain of abuse. It was like, my great-grandfather, he used to get drunk and beat my grandfather, and then my grandfather beat my dad, and he beat me, and I won't beat my son. And that's absolutely 100%. Absolutely, you're going to break that chain because, as you said, Christine, about sexual abuse, it often happens, all kinds of abuse. But there needs to be a breaking of the chain of just like this ignorance of spiritually important things, and ignorance of the faith, and ignorance of religion, a lack of concern with it. We've had generations of people who've been concerned with nothing but the pleasant house in the suburbs and making the money and the solid 401k and being able to retire.
Yeah,
and there's been no focus on the spiritual. If it has, it's like, yes, we go to church because it's a socially acceptable thing to do. That's what people of our class do. No, we need to get back to the point where the faith is very important. important, and where that lived experience of the family is important.
And so here's the problem, going back to this question. You go to these parishes, and most of these parishes do not have an effective male leader, the priest, there saying all of this. No. We have probably just said more in whatever we've been on, 50 minutes? We have probably said more authentic Catholicism regarding the family and all of the problems and everything that fall from it and how this works its way into the clergy than the average Mass going, presuming they're going to Mass, Catholic, has heard in probably 10 years from the pulpit.
Yeah.
And that's the problem. And again, back to the question of the whole malformed priest, which is kind of how we kicked all this off. How do you break that? They think, I'm talking about the James Martins. I think James Martin knows he's lying. I think he knows the church teaches what it teaches. I think he just doesn't want to do it. Personally, I think he's gay. I don't know if he is or not. He's certainly gay friendly at the bare minimum, as we know. He's never come out and said it. I mean, I sent him, communications and said, if you're gay, you need to say it. Because you're biased. Just fine, show what your bias is. He never answers it. Then the one time he gave a response, what was it? He said, my superiors have forbidden me from revealing what my sexual orientation is.
So he's gay.
Yeah, exactly.
So he's gay, because if he wasn't gay, then
say no.
Just say no. I mean, really, yeah, anyway, so.
I'm not at liberty to discuss that.
I'm not at liberty to discuss the fact that I am gay.
But you look at this and you're like, okay, you guys need to, you need to come cleaner. They believe, not the Martins, these guys believe that the malformation they have received is correct. They think it's correct. They were sitting in seminary, especially this crop of bishops, who were ordaining these guys, putting vocations directors in place, and then putting rectors in place, who are screening out guys who would look at this and go, oh, wow, this is fantastic. I don't know anything about this. Wow, this is great. I want to belong to that. They block those people from getting into seminary, maybe not as much as they used to, but now the flow of candidates for the priesthood is slowed to a virtual trickle. Yeah. And we know that there are seminaries, I know because seminarians have called me and told me and texted me and everything else, that they are one of the questions, a screening question for getting into seminaries, various seminaries in the United States is, do you watch Church Militant? Yeah.
Wow.
And you do. And if you watch Church Militant, they prevent you from coming in.
Wow.
Getting ordained.
Well, just on the topic of solutions here.
Please.
I was going to say,
one of the things that we really need to do is we have to help priests understand the incredible dignity of the priesthood, because I think that concept has been completely lost among the priests today.
So how do we do
not understand? So, well,
let's go up and
first,
tell them.
Turn to St. John Vianney. Okay, yep. St. John Vianney, one of the holiest men who has ever walked the face of the earth. There's a reason he's the patron saint of all parish priests, so we can turn to him. This is one of his wonderful quotes here. He says, "Oh, how great is the priest. If he realized what he is, he would die. God obeys him. He utters a few words, and the Lord descends from heaven at his voice to be contained within a small host. After God, the priest is everything. Only in heaven will he fully realize what he is." If priests really understood the dignity that they have and the awesome responsibility, that would help open their eyes to, like, wow, why am I debasing myself by doing this?
Possibly, but I also think that there's a cultural issue within the church, and I know Michael was begging for a solution, but we have a bit of a catch-22 here, because there's a culture of squishiness and an idolization of moderation in the church. Just like the Goldwater quote goes, something like, extremism in the defense of liberty is no vice. Like, you have to know that being an extremist in defense of truth is good, and it's good to put your foot down.
Jesus was an extremist.
Exactly. We're all told, and these priests are all cooked in this culture where it's like, if you get rushed by the people in your parish and they don't like something you're doing, when you're doing something right liturgically or preaching something correctly morally or doctrinally, that you're kind of to capitulate to them, because that's what good leaders do. They listen. And it's like, no, good leaders lead and they stand up for truth, but we have bishops who rush in, and it's like this customer is always right approach to parish life. So the bishop kind of will get involved, because the Karens, the church Karens, will, of course, squeaky wheel gets the grease. They rush to the bishop, they complain to the bishop, they try and get this priest fired, just like they try and get you fired if you disagree with them in industry or anywhere else. And then the bishops capitulate, because the bishops are themselves often weak men.
Well, if priests understood first that hell exists and that many souls go there and that their very souls depend on them telling the truth. St. John Vianney actually addressed this. He said, if a priest doesn't want to lose his soul, He has to tell the truth from the pulpit, even if he were convinced that as soon as he steps down, he will be murdered. He said that if you don't want to lose your soul, that is how you must be as a priest.
the only way to be a priest.
Period.
Yeah. Well, I think, look, this whole question of like imparting the dignity
I'm sorry,
to
1 second.
priests.
It's the only way to be a Catholic as well.
Well, yes. The whole question of imparting this sense of dignity to the priesthood, I think that this is a really good idea. And I think the way that you said, just go up and tell the priests, but there's a certain awkwardness to that. It's like, hey, Father, I just want to talk to you about the great dignity of the priesthood. And he's like, I don't know, worrying about the fish fry that night or something, because they are living in a very practical world. Even when they say Mass or hear confessions, there's this great practicality to it. It's like, I got to sit in the box and I got to listen and I got to offer some solid advice and I got to give a penance and there's a thing.
You got to be out in 20 minutes.
Yeah, and I got to go and then I got to go say Mass and there's a thing to do. So one of the things that I do, again, tiny little thing, and I'm sure there are probably some priests who know me have noticed that I do it. Whenever a priest walks by me and he's doing like something priesty, it's not like he's just passing the parking lot or met him at the store or something, I will cross myself. I will cross myself, and if I'm standing in the pew, I'll actually dip and make a little kneel, because he is acting in alter Christus. It's like there's Jesus Christ passing by. Now, I think that what that does is, again, teach your children to make those little devotions to the priesthood. This isn't elevating the priest to like some sort of godly figure. This isn't clericalism or anything. It's acknowledging
it's elevating
that
the
awesomeness.
priesthood to what it should be.
I've done that when I'm at the airport. I'll see a priest. I'll walk up to him. He doesn't know who I am, but I'll shake his hand. I'll be like, thank you, Father, for your priestly ministry. If I see someone in a cassock or clerics, I'll say, thank you, Father, for wearing your clerics, because it's very encouraging to people like me. And they always leave with a smile. I don't know anything about the priest, but it encourages them in their priesthood.
I was in the Philippines a number of years ago. We went there for a few trips. I saw a wonderful little Filipino custom of whenever they'd be talking or meet the priest, or they would kiss his hand. I thought, so I brought that back here. And I do it every single time. But when you meet a priest, it's like you kiss his hand. It's a little reminder to him. I don't know you, Father. I don't know Father Dave. I don't know who you are, but I know that Father is now your identity. Kiss your hand. That hand brings Christ down from heaven and saves people from hell.
Exactly.
Guys, one thing that I think should be, gets some attention, that flies under the radar a lot, is the fact that guys like James Martin, they're evil, they're leading people to hell. But these priests, kind of living maybe closeted lives, they're deeply conflicted. And the way you know that is because they're constantly trying to justify their lifestyle. That explains all the eisegesis. That explains why they're going to all of this trouble to do things. And I think conservatives, we've been too quick to really poo-poo the idea and the place of the academy, of the ivory towers. But that's where a lot of these bad ideas have come from, and that's what's given them wheels. We need, in addition to the family, in addition to purifying the priesthood, we need good, solid, faithful Catholic scholars who are going to be able to take things like Brueggemann's point that, the Gospels somehow undo all of the anti-gay scriptures from the rest of the entire corpus of the Bible. We need Catholic scholars to absolutely annihilate that in the clearest terms.
No, it's true. It's very much true. There's I think we talk an awful lot about cultural issues here and how they play out in politics and the institutions and everything. And the sort of the communist idea of like the long march through the institutions, until Catholics really begin to realize that's what's happened here. All of the institutions of the church, the priesthood, the schools, the academy, all of it has had the exact same long march going along with it parallel. And, this is a 100-year war for starters. There is no silver bullet for any of this. All of these things are great suggestions. They need to be done, but you are facing massive gale force winds. You got to understand that. And if you understand that, you walk up to the rector and go, excuse me, Father, you gay? Thank you very much for joining us for this episode of The Download. While there are priests out there of the same ilk as Father James Martin, there are also priests, many good priests, of goodwill. And certainly there are many priests who need our prayers. And speaking of that, let's now pray for our priests as we finish our show, as we do all of our shows in prayer, begging Our Lady's intercession for our nation and our church, and especially the priesthood. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen. Sancta Salve Regina, Mater Misericordiae, vita dulcedo et spes nostra salve. Ad te clamamus, exules filia Eve. ad te suspiramus, gementes et flentes, in hac lacrimarum vale. Ea ergo advocata nostra, illos tuos misericordes oculos ad nos converte, et Iesum benedictum fructum ventris tui, nobis post hoc exilium ostende. O clemens, O pia, O dulcis Virgo Maria. Amen. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen. Thank you again for joining us for the download. We're going to be premiering a new episode just like this every weekday, Monday through Friday at 5 p.m. Eastern Time. That's Eastern. From all of us here at Church Militant, God bless you.